The book I chose was ABC Shapes by Angela P. Arrhenius, and it talks about a lot of various shapes. And here is the other part of the inside cover. At the very beginning of the book, it talks about what shapes can you find hiding in plain sight. So this is a very good way to get kids thinking about different shapes. It does put 2D shapes in what would be a 3D dimension. Like the balls do not look like spheres, even though they do look like they're very much just pictures. If you think about a person, you think of a 3D person, not a drawn person. The first letters for the alphabet with A and B are arch and albus. So while these are both very good description words, it is hard for potentially some K through 2 students to say albus and to know how to pronounce that. And arch is a good one. It does show very well. While this shows an accurate picture of both shapes, both of them together do not quite make sense and don't really make it easier for students to remember either of them or to how to help to identify which ones are which. So that could be confusing for students as well. The next, I skipped a couple letters. I went basically just to some of the problem ones. Also, they used ellipse instead of oval, and fertilis is also going to be a harder vocabulary term for students. Also, here is 2 pictures. This one I think works well together. Yes. Then there is OG and pyramid. The OG shape is very interesting and not one that I knew the name of, so it would be really good information for a student who didn't know what that is. And so then it might be more of an upper elementary vocabulary word. Here is also another example of vocabulary terms that would be difficult for a student who is in the K through 2, K through 3, and then how to also define them. The major problem with these 2 letters, particularly the squircle, is because they made up a random term to fit the letter S. And so while this book goes through and does make a shape letter for each letter, that's the only purpose of the book. So for this purpose, it's fine, but for to actually teach math terms and how to identify different shapes, squircle would not work. It doesn't help students. It would potentially be confusing to know, when is it an oval or a circle when it's a squircle? So it just doesn't fit the purpose of actually teaching a math shape unit. So the problem I found with this one was the X shape. Potentially because anytime you see a letter, you could say, that is a letter shape. But again, it doesn't have any math term in it. And in math, you could have said, that looks like an intersection. So that would have been a better way to say that shape, because then it could be applied to lines later on. So I feel like the X shape was not a good representation of the shape. For the ungula of this page, did not feel like students in elementary school would need to know what the shape is or how to label it or how to identify which one it is. This is a shape that you probably wouldn't need until really far in high school or in college. And so I did not feel like this should have been in this book, especially if it was geared towards elementary, which is how it seems based off of the cover and just having an ABC kind of way to associate the alphabet with a shape. So it did definitely seem like it was geared for elementary students, even though the content in it was not. And overall, throughout the book, they don't show the shapes in different planes. They're all on the same the same plane as what was described. So I would have changed that as well. And overall, it was just very hard to figure out who the target audience was, and if the author was intention was to have the purpose of the book be for just categorizing shapes from A, B, C to Z, or if it was for helping to teach math, which it could in some aspects, if you picked certain shapes out of there to then talk with your students about, but otherwise overall it had a lot of problems.